A lot of people are criticizing this show, and I understand why. It can feel overly sexualized, some of the characters are not dynamic enough, and The Weeknd's acting was kind of cringe. But despite all that, I really liked the first episode. Was it one of the most amazing pilots I've ever seen? Not really. But I am a little surprised that so many people are dragging it, when I do think there's a lot to be enjoyed here. Our first scene starts off with pop star Jocelyn doing a photo shoot. The photographer asks her to go through a range of emotions like laughter, innocence, mischievous, pure sex, vulnerable, and emotional. When Jocelyn gets too emotional, she starts to cry. I'm not sure if this was CGI or Lily Rose Depp doing this herself, but either way, I think it does a good job of setting the stage for what's to come. It feels like she's a slave to these emotions. She doesn't get to choose how she feels. She's dictated to feel a certain way purely for entertainment's sake. Her entire life and personality revolves around the limelight. It's almost as if she's not a real person, just a conglomerate of different emotions that are made to sell. Later, we're introduced to Jocelyn's PR team, including her manager, Chaim, played by Hank Azaria in a pretty bad Israeli accent. I think this was kind of dumb, considering they could have just had Hank Azaria play the role in a normal accent. I know he's very well known for his range of voices on The Simpsons, but this feels like overkill, and it's hard to take the character seriously. On the other hand, I do love how these characters are portrayed. Yes, they're unlikable and two-dimensional, but at the same time, this was just the pilot episode, so let's give them some time. I still think the characters are effective though, because it adds so much to how Jocelyn's life is controlled by others. These people obviously don't care about her. They would easily turn their back on her if they ever needed to and would never look back. Yet they still pretend to care about her and will superficially defend her whenever they have to. Early on in the episode, Leia, Jocelyn's best friend and assistant, remarks that she's trying to be a good friend, to which she instantly gets told, "You're not her friend, you work for her." This isn't profound writing or character development or anything, but it adds to the feel and image of the exhaustive and backstabbing nature of Hollywood and the entertainment industry, which is part of the reason I'm having such a hard time understanding why people are hating this show. It's not incredible the way Succession was, but there's nothing in here that's so bad that I would give it a negative review. It's not amazing, but it's not exactly terrible either. A big controversy of the episode is a sexual picture of Jocelyn that has leaked on the internet. Her PR team seems furious about this, but Jocelyn hardly seems to care, which is leading me to believe she might have leaked the photo herself. She's obviously looking for something more adventurous with her life. She recently had a mental breakdown, she lost her mother, and she's not even excited about this new album she's releasing soon. She's bored of her current life and desperately wants to spice things up, which gives us the perfect entrance for who I'm assuming will be the main antagonist, Tedros. But before we get into that, let's talk about The Weeknd's acting. It's not great, but it's not nearly as bad as everyone is making it out to be. There are some cringe parts, like when he enters Jocelyn's gate as if he's Dracula, or the god-awful rat tail, or when he's talking to himself in the mirror, but he still does a good job of giving that character such a creepy and unnerving vibe. And this is what I think works about the series. You have this young pop star whose life is completely controlled by those around her, limiting her freedom. So in rebellion, she becomes attracted to this weird, strange, creepy guy who gives her something different to feel instead of the same boring emotions we saw at the beginning of the episode. Tedros is still controlling her. Since she's a victim to this lifestyle, she's naturally drawn to a man who holds her hand and leads her down a dark path. For her, it's dangerous and terrifying, but at this point in her life, that's exactly what she needs. It's a really interesting form of self-destructive behavior. Now, before we go on, I think it's fair to address the criticism of over-sexualization that the series is getting. Particularly, a lot of people are throwing shade at the scene where Jocelyn chokes herself while masturbating. One of the themes of this show is to explore how over-sexualized the pop music industry is. And how else are they supposed to convey that if they don't over-sexualize Jocelyn's life? Sex appeal is the driving force between all of Jocelyn's decisions. What outfit is she going to wear? What kind of cigarettes is she going to smoke? What are her friends going to be like? Her entire life is sex, sex, and more sex. So you have to get some nude scenes in there to make sure the audience is able to understand that vibe. The scene where she masturbates isn't amazing character development, but at the same time it felt real to me. I think that showing a person's deep sexual desires can give a lot of insight as to who they are. We're seeing more of this lust for adventure and danger that is just exuding throughout her entire character. And there's an interesting scene right after this where she's having an interview with the reporter from Vanity Fair. And I love the power dynamic in the scene. It's decided by who is touching the recorder. The reporter turns off the recorder to try and make Jocelyn feel more comfortable, to goad her into talking about the sexual photo. But Jocelyn turns it back on and sidesteps the question to make the reporter feel uncomfortable. It shows us that Jocelyn is a lot smarter than she seemed at first and adds a more confident dynamic to her character. When the reporter asks her who she answers to, Jocelyn tells her that she answers to God. She does not make her own decisions. She is not in control of her life. She is only following what God, or whoever is in control of her life, is telling her what to do. Later on, Tedros comes by her place for an extremely sensual night, and I think a lot of people cringe at these scenes. And trust me, I get it. The Weeknd's mediocre acting doesn't exactly help. But I gotta admit, these scenes are pretty hot. I think they work because of what we've seen from Jocelyn up until this point. We've seen how everything in her life is controlled by others, even sometimes her emotions. She's suffered a lot of recent trauma and is looking for something dangerous and adventurous, and she's found that in Tedros. Sure, he's cringe, gross, even with that disgusting rat tail, but it's the vibe he gives out and the energy that she's attracted to. I don't know if I can say this is incredible writing, but it's at least interesting to watch, which is why I think all the terrible reviews are actually pretty harsh. I think a lot of people will enjoy watching this show for things other than the writing. There's a lot to get invested in here, and while it's certainly not for everyone, it's also not bad. I'm really excited to see where this series goes. I think it has a lot of potential, and I can't wait to see what comes next.